Steamnextfest has ended. With the huge catalog that was on offer though, there are still games to watch out for. If you happen to play any of these, then leave us a comment with what you thought about them. First up is Scars Above. The first impression I had of it was, what if you took the spookiness of Returnal and made a control like Mass Effect, and then added in some Dark Souls rules? Shooting feels good and snappy with an emphasis placed on monitoring your environment. Your weapons do different kinds of elemental damage like electricity and fire. So if your enemy is in the water, you can do more damage with electricity since it will do a wet combo. Odd naming conventions aside, it does lead to some strategy and not just mindless shooting. You get a melee and a dodge roll to round out your basic kit, with both having satisfying weight to them. Giant crystals signify your Dark Souls bonfires and act just like you would expect them to. You can learn abilities that are split between engineering and xenobiology. This basically translates to item, weapons, and character passives. There's really not anything to say on the visuals. They're fine. The story is definitely trying to set up a big mystery. Will it pay off? We shall see sometime soon. Next up is Hell is Others. This is kind of a hard one to describe. It's a PvP-VE, story-heavy, top-down shooter. Shooting feels a bit like Resident Evil, where you have to ready the gun to fire it, but it doesn't have the tank control feel to its movement. The only part that feels limiting is the field of view your character has. You can only see enemies, players, and some lootable objects if it's actively in your cone. If it's not, it's straight invisible to you. I don't really mind it, as it adds a nice paranoia aspect to the game. You spend time in your hotel where it switches to a side-scrolling perspective to give you your story bits and manage your resources. Once you leave the hotel is where you encounter demonic enemies and, even worse, other players. Everyone is trying to do their own quests / loot the town, and technically, your loot. Once you finish your objective, or you just want to leave, you have to find an available elevator to get back to your room and safety. From there, you just rinse and repeat. There is a good chunk of world building that happens at the beginning of the game that is somehow simultaneously not enough. It's trying to introduce concepts to you, but the way it's written make you feel like you were already supposed to know it. It does have a darkly humorous undertone to it that sometimes lands and sometimes comes off as just silly. I think it overall needs another pass on its writing, but it's still overall an enticing game. My main worry about it is if it doesn't find a big enough audience to populate the servers. I couldn't even leave the hotel until it found enough players, which got worryingly long during the demo. We'll find out how it turns out come October 20th. Next game on the list is From Space. This was the game I was most looking forward to from this batch. I came away with it with the least amount of feelings toward it though. It was just fine. It has a charming art style, tight controls, and lots of options. Characters are distinctly different and seem to have some interesting build options that we just couldn't get into in the demo. There's also a good amount of guns to play with and a surprising amount of options when it comes to offensive and support items. There just wasn't ever that big hook moment that gets you real excited to be playing it. This could be a symptom of the demo just ending in what felt arbitrary, and I hope that's the case.
What?
Oh, really?
Oh, well.
Really? That was abrupt. We also didn't realize going in it was going to be an open world setup as opposed to tight levels, and I think the latter would have helped it. It had some issues on figuring out where to go and what to do. We even had to backtrack to get an NPC that didn't follow us because we apparently didn't talk to him enough times, which is annoying. Despite all the problems, I do actually want to play more of it. I think it could be a good group game, especially once you get deeper into it. You can find out for yourself on November 3rd. The last game on this list is Undecember. It's a pretty standard Diablo clone that feels fairly polished. Gameplay is exactly what you would expect from a Diablo-like, and the cinematics even look good to boot. The beginning of the demo smartly gives you access to some later game build options right out of the gate. This gives you a good taste of every class so you can make a quick decision on what you want to go with. This does make going to level nothing when you start the game proper a little painful. There doesn't seem to be standard classes that you pick from, such as warrior, mage, rogue, things like that. But instead, it's a bit more freeform. Some skills work with some weapons, some don't. I'm interested in how well the grid system for slotting special moves turns out in the late game. It seems like it was setting up being able to link passive skill runes to multiple active spell runes, so how you lay everything out could end up being very important to your character's performance. The game does overall have the feel of a budget Diablo game, but I feel like the description gives it a disservice. It doesn't feel like it was phoned in, and you can see the effort that devs are putting into it. I do feel like its visual aesthetic doesn't make it stand out and does make it a bit forgettable. It could have stood a bit more stylized, perhaps. What do you think? Do you have any thoughts about these games? Want to see more of our opinions? Leave a comment, give us a subscribe, and like the video. It helps out us YouTubers, and I'd love to hear other opinions on the games. See you next time.